Namaskar. How much money, assuming George Soros was the person who funded Hindenburg Research to short Adani stock, did George Soros make? For understanding this, we need to take a look at how George Soros made his first billion when he shorted the British pound. So I kind of touched on this in a previous episode, but I didn't give you all the numbers. Here I'm going to share with you the numbers and how it played out so you have an idea how George Soros made his first $1 billion trade, $1 billion trade. Here we go. The year was 1992. The British pound was tied with the euro through what is called as an exchange rate mechanism, ERM. Now, what they decided was that if the British pound followed closely the ERM, then the volatility in the British pound could be reduced. In fact, this was the hallmark of John Major, who succeeded Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher did not want to have the British pound pegged against the ERM, but John Major was insistent. In fact, he made that his bully pulpit speech. He was the Chancellor of Exchequer. He said, this is how we should proceed to try and ride out some of the financial storms that might come Britain's way. So what was agreed was inside the ERM, the Deutsche Mark was considered to be the one that was the strongest currency. So they picked the British pound to be within a very narrow range of the Deutsche Mark, 2.78 DM to 3.13 DM. Okay, so this is how the thing played out. You can see here at the beginning of July 1992 that the exchange rate for the GBP, that is British pound, Great British Pound, is around 2.83, 2.9. Now, from 90, when this took effect up until 1992, things were kind of hunky-dory, wasn't too bad, except that there was a recession. And when the recession hit, the number of jobs that were lost in the United Kingdom were quite a lot, and people were scrambling to find a way to shore up the currency. There was a feeling that the British pound will not be able to stay pegged within that narrow range. And that's where George Soros and his men went into action. They bet heavily that the British pound would fall. Now, when there was a run against the pound, what does the British Exchequer do? They keep buying up the pounds from the market to shore up the price. So what happened was, at one point of time, they bought $15 billion worth of pounds, and the British pound was still falling. Now, all through this time, George Soros's quantum fund was betting that the pound will fall, and they started investing heavily into it. And coincidentally, their investment into the short of the British pound was also 15 billion. And then when that buying the pounds did not help shore up the British pound value, then what they did was they started increasing the interest rate yield. They went to 10%, no effect, 12%, no effect, 15%. England was offering 15% interest rate on deposits. Can you believe that? And still the pound kept falling. So at that point of time, they said, okay, we are taking the pound off of the exchange rate mechanism. And that's why you see around the 6th of September, that's when the fall happens dramatically, and the exchange rate, the British pound to Deutsche Mark settled down at somewhere, this is the number it settled down, and that is around 2.375. And in the meantime, as the short played out, the $15 billion that quantum fund had put in. Now, this quantum fund is taken money from many investors. George Soros was the person who was executing it. So they cashed out somewhere in like end of December at $22 billion. So 15 billion in, 22 billion out. The profit, 7 billion. A hedge fund manager typically makes 20% of the profit. So 20% of 7 billion is 1.4 billion. That's how George Soros made $1.4 billion off of just this one trade. So this is what George Soros made in the case of the British pound. Now let's take a look at what has been happening when the Hindenburg Research shorted Adani stock. The Adani stock was riding at around 250, and now this is the total worth of, we are talking here, the number 250 is the total worth of Adani Group businesses. It was around $250 billion, and now it has come down to 100. So it's a steep fall, $150 billion. They have lost more than half of their value. But how much money did George Soros, assuming he was the one who put the money into Hindenburg Research, make? Well, here is a way to calculate that, and I'm going to show that to you. It's not so easy to short stocks in the Indian stock market because there are a lot of restrictions and so on and so forth. So if an investor were to bet against an Indian company, you can do that using the India's main stock index, which is the Nifty 50, of which the Adani Enterprises is having a fair amount of weightage. So when the Adani Enterprises value was falling, Nifty 50 also would have fallen. Now, if banks have an operation in Singapore, and this is a place where short sellers can do these type of trades, you can create a product. It's called actually like a derivative called as a single stock future. That single stock future will essentially be riding on the value of Adani Enterprises inside Nifty 50. Let us say Nifty 50 has 15% or 10% Adani Enterprises. Of 50 stocks, we are saying that Adani Enterprises has 10% of that. Okay, so if Nifty 50 fell by 200 points, the equivalent would be 20 points for the Adani Enterprises. I'm not saying that Nifty 50 fell that much. I'm just giving you an idea of numbers. But the whole idea here is there isn't much liquidity in the market, meaning not many shares get traded. Therefore, the returns out of that are not going to be very big. Certainly not in the $1 billion range, I don't think. Okay, so that leads us to the next point. So what did Soros benefit from shorting Hindenburg Research? He didn't benefit much monetarily, but he has been clearly after trying to destabilize the current government, and perhaps that is the main reason why this whole thing was done. They have been working at it for 2 years. There's an article that I'm going to give you a link to. Take a look at that. That's a Financial Times article. You can take its word or you can ignore it. Essentially, it's talking numbers. So you can look at that to decide whether the numbers make sense or not. So the damage to the loss of money in terms of how much money they make is not very high. At the same time, the valuation of Adani Enterprises has come down. However, the Adani Enterprises is owned mostly by the family of Adani. So that part, I don't think they are going to be, too worried about it, because they won't lose control because of that. This is a notional loss. Just as they've been riding the wave for a long time in the recent months. So it went up, it went down, it corrected itself. And that will probably come back up. I'm not talking about the legalities, how or what kind of methods were used to try and shore up the price. There could be some things that could be investigated by the investigating agencies. That's a story for a different day. But in terms of the net amount of money being made, that's not much. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.